The corridors of Buckingham Palace were unusually silent that morning. A soft drizzle covered the courtyard, and the flag above the palace fluttered in the cool London air. Inside, the royal staff moved with subdued urgency, aware that something monumental had taken place. The Duke of Kent, one of the most respected senior members of the royal family, had passed away peacefully in his private chambers. His final words, later shared by the palace, would leave the entire nation, and the monarchy itself, deeply moved. In his final moments, the Duke had requested to speak with one person, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. It was a request that carried weight, not only because of his frail condition but because it symbolized something far greater: the passing of wisdom, duty, and legacy from one generation to another. Catherine, known for her poise and quiet strength, arrived quietly, accompanied only by a private aide and her deep sense of reverence. Those who were present later described the atmosphere as holy. The Duke, lying beneath a wool blanket embroidered with his family crest, looked upon Catherine with a faint smile. He had always admired her composure, her empathy, and the way she had carried the burdens of royalty with grace. In a voice barely above a whisper, he told her, "The future rests not in crowns or ceremonies but in the kindness you show to people." Catherine nodded, tears welling in her eyes. For decades, the Duke had embodied the old-world traditions of the monarchy: loyalty, restraint, and dignity. Now, in those final words, he entrusted to Catherine something more valuable than any title: the soul of the monarchy itself. The palace later released a brief statement confirming his passing and referencing his message to the Princess of Wales. The Duke spoke of legacy, service, and the importance of compassion, the statement read. But insiders revealed more: that the Duke had specifically asked that his personal collection of letters, diaries, and service medals be passed to Catherine. This gesture shocked many within the royal circle. The Duke of Kent was known to be a man of immense privacy. His personal archives, spanning from World War II experiences to private correspondences with the late Queen Elizabeth II, were treasures of royal history. To entrust them to Catherine, and not to King Charles, or to William directly, carried a symbolic meaning few could ignore. Those close to the family believe the Duke saw Catherine as the bridge between the old and new monarchy. Unlike past generations, she represented modern values: empathy, motherhood, and quiet resilience. In her, the Duke saw continuity, not through blood, but through character. Catherine was said to have sat beside him for almost an hour. The two spoke softly, sometimes in silence. The Duke reminisced about the old days: coronations, wars, public duties, and private sacrifices. Catherine listened intently, aware that she was witnessing the closing chapter of an era that defined the royal identity. When she left the room, she carried not just memories but a sealed letter, the Duke's final written words, addressed to the future queen. No one, not even palace aides, knew its full contents. But one thing was clear: the Duke wanted her to remember that the monarchy's power had never been about command, but about care. News of his death spread rapidly. Across Britain, tributes poured in. From veterans who had served under his ceremonial command to charities he had supported quietly for decades, everyone spoke of the same thing: his humility. He never sought headlines, yet his influence shaped generations of royals who came after him. The British press described his final gesture as a royal passing of the torch. For many, it signaled the beginning of a new chapter, one where Catherine would rise not merely as the wife of the future king, but as the moral center of the monarchy itself. At Windsor, where preparations began for a state funeral, royal correspondents noted that Catherine seemed unusually contemplative. Those close to her said she spent much of her time reading through letters the Duke had given her, some written decades ago. Each one, reportedly, reflected on duty, not as an obligation, but as a privilege to serve. One of his notes, shared by a family friend, read, "We must remind the world that crowns do not shine on their own. They shine because of the light we give them." That line soon flooded social media, resonating deeply with royal watchers and ordinary citizens alike. As the nation mourned, King Charles was said to be deeply moved by his cousin's passing. Their relationship had spanned more than 7 decades, tied by both blood and duty. Yet even the king, sources said, acknowledged that the Duke's decision to share his final thoughts with Catherine was a testament to her role in shaping the monarchy's next era. At the funeral, Catherine walked behind the casket, her head bowed, holding a single white lily, the Duke's favorite flower. Cameras captured her expression, serene, sorrowful, and strong. It became one of the defining images of the day, reminding viewers of the grace she carried amid the storm of royal responsibilities. Later, during a private reception, a senior aide revealed that Catherine had vowed to honor the Duke's legacy by continuing his charitable work with war veterans. She reportedly told her team, "If we forget where we come from, we lose sight of where we're going." Weeks after the funeral, the palace quietly announced a new initiative under Catherine's patronage, the Kent Foundation for Duty and Service, inspired by the Duke's lifelong dedication to public responsibility. The news brought tears to many who had admired him, and pride to those who saw Catherine stepping further into her future role as Queen Consort. Observers began to notice subtle changes in Catherine's demeanor during public appearances. She spoke with a new confidence, her words carrying echoes of the Duke's wisdom. When she visited a veterans' hospital, she paused longer than usual, listening to each story, her tone gentler, her empathy deeper. Behind the palace walls, senior courtiers noted that her influence within the royal household was quietly expanding. It was as if the Duke's final blessing had unlocked a new chapter, one where her leadership, though soft-spoken, was undeniable. Royal historians began drawing comparisons between Catherine and the late Queen Mother, who had also been a stabilizing force during uncertain times. Both women understood that true power in royalty lies not in authority, but in connection. Months later, excerpts from the Duke's private diary were released posthumously. One entry, dated only a few years before his passing, read, "Catherine carries the old spirit with a new heart. If the monarchy is to endure, it will be through her." That single line reignited public admiration for the Princess of Wales. Many saw it as a prophetic statement, a recognition that, in an age of scrutiny and skepticism, Catherine's grace could keep the monarchy's flame alive. When the palace finally confirmed that she would take a more prominent ceremonial role in upcoming state functions, the decision was met with overwhelming support. Newspapers hailed it as the Duchess's destiny, while commentators noted that she had transitioned seamlessly from supportive wife to future sovereign in her own right. At a later engagement, when asked about the Duke, Catherine smiled softly and said, "He taught me that leadership begins with listening." Those few words captured the essence of her growth, from royal figurehead to moral leader. By then, the world had come to understand that the Duke's final act wasn't simply about trust. It was about legacy. He had seen something in Catherine that even she might not have fully recognized, a quiet strength that would anchor the royal family in the years to come. As 2026 approached, speculation grew that Catherine's public profile was being intentionally elevated. Royal insiders hinted that she was being prepared not just for duty beside the king, but for an eventual reign defined by compassion and resolve, the very qualities the Duke had praised in her. British citizens, many of whom had grown distant from the monarchy, began to feel a renewed sense of pride. The story of the Duke's final words and Catherine's promise to honor them had rekindled a belief in what the crown could represent: integrity, empathy, and unity. In the quiet of Kensington Palace one evening, Catherine was seen standing by her desk, reading from a small leather-bound journal, the Duke's diary. A staff member passing by later recalled her whispering, "Thank you, sir, I won't fail you." That simple moment summed up the weight of her journey. The Duke's farewell had not been an ending but a beginning, a torch passed from an elder statesman of the monarchy to its most beloved modern figure. His final words, preserved in palace archives, remain a message not only to Catherine but to all who serve under the crown: duty fades if it is not renewed. Let kindness be your renewal. And in that, perhaps, lies the truest legacy of the Duke of Kent, a man who believed that history is not written in grand speeches or monuments, but in the quiet strength of those who carry the light forward.